Imagine slamming your fist against a wall so hard that your knuckles sting for days. That sudden roar in your chest feels like a beast unleashed, and in that moment, it seems impossible to tame. You remember the last time you lost it, when your friend's careless words turned your calm afternoon into a storm of rage. What if I told you that every storm, no matter how fierce, can be observed, reframed, and ultimately mastered? That's exactly what Stoic philosophy offers when you face the fire of anger. You step into a familiar trap. A small insult blooms into a wildfire of accusation. Your pulse races. Your vision narrows. Your thoughts loop on, "How dare they?" In a typical script, you'd let that anger drive you to lash out. Maybe a harsh text, a slammed door, or a bitter retort that you'll later regret. But what if anger isn't a call to arms, but an invitation to deeper awareness? Marcus Aurelius reminds you, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. That judgment, your interpretation, lights the fuse of your fury. When you feel that familiar heat, notice first the physical signs. Your chest tightens, your throat constricts, and an almost electric tremor spreads through your arms. You might clench your teeth without realizing it. Common advice urges you to count to 10 or take deep breaths. But Stoicism dives deeper. It invites you to question the judgment underneath the emotion. Why did that comment wound you so deeply? What expectation did it clash with? Epictetus once taught, it's not events that disturb people, but the views they take of them. Pause, then ask yourself, is this insult a reflection of your worth, or merely someone else's opinion? You recall a heated moment in your own life. You were behind the wheel, traffic at a standstill, as another driver honked and cut you off. Your vision blurred with rage, and you felt on the brink of chasing them down to deliver a piece of your mind. But something arrested you, a memory of a new Stoic habit you'd read about that morning. You squeezed the wheel, inhaled slowly, and pictured a calm sea. In that pause, the anger lost its fuel. By the time the light turned green, you only felt curiosity. Why did that accident of traffic unsettle me so? Historic debate still churns over whether ancient Stoics ever welcomed anger as a tool rather than a flaw. Some scholars argue that Seneca's famous admonitions against fury hint at cautious acceptance of its raw power for self-defense. Others insist that anger was entirely rejected, seen as a vice dragging the soul away from virtue. Regardless, the prevailing Stoic roadmap is clear. Observe the spark, trace it to its source, and reframe the narrative. Let's break down that process in real time. First, you feel the spark, perhaps a barrage of negative emails or a betrayed trust. Step back and notice how your body tightens. Label the sensation, this is anger. Naming it loosens its grip. Next, identify your judgment, they disrespected me, or this shouldn't have happened. Then pose the counter question, is it in my power to change their behavior? If not, then Stoics say it's not within your control and thus not worth disturbing your inner peace. Picture a modern-day scenario. A colleague takes credit for your idea in a meeting. You feel your face flush and your nails dig into the table. A typical reaction is to storm out or launch a scathing email later. But imagine instead waiting until you're calm, then addressing the issue with clear facts. I noticed my proposal wasn't acknowledged. Can we discuss how to share credit going forward? You transform the raw energy of anger into rational action, guided by the Stoic maxim that virtue, justice, and honesty matters more than satisfying an ego-fueled impulse. You might wonder, won't suppressing anger make me passive or inauthentic? This is a common concern. Stoics aren't advocating repression but redirection. You don't bottle it up, you dissect it. Instead of letting it erupt, you channel the energy toward a constructive outcome. It's like transforming volcanic heat into geothermal power, still intense, but harnessed for good. Consider the saboteur in your head, that voice repeating worst-case scenarios. They'll disrespect you again. You'll never get ahead if you're always the nice one. Stoicism teaches you to catch that voice, question its logic, and replace it with something like, I cannot control their choices, only my response. This shift doesn't come overnight. It's a muscle you build through daily practice. Journaling about anger episodes, reflecting on Marcus Aurelius' words, and rehearsing calm responses. You have to rehearse the storm before the storm hits. Ancient Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils, where they imagined insults, losses, and failures in advance to build immunity. You might spend 5 quiet minutes each morning envisioning a frustrating email, a traffic jam, or a harsh critique. When the real event arrives, you're not surprised. The storm comes and goes. No devastation, no consumed ego. Do you remember when you first tasted the relief of this practice? A friend called you out of the blue, furious over a minor misunderstanding. In the past, you'd have matched their anger slide for slide. But this time, you paused, listened, and responded calmly, choosing words that healed rather than hurt. Their anger subsided faster than you'd expected, and the relationship grew stronger. That moment felt almost magical, but it was just stoicism in action. Stoic texts occasionally hint at tempered anger, a righteous indignation for injustice that spurs you to speak up for the oppressed. Scholars still argue whether such indignation counts as anger or a separate, virtuous flame. Either way, Stoics valued actions aimed at justice, not personal revenge. When you transform anger into advocacy, you honor that tradition. So now, each time you feel that familiar heat rising, you've got a roadmap. Notice the body, name the emotion, trace it to the judgment, question its logic, and decide whether it's within your control. If it is, act virtuously. If it isn't, release it. Remember, no man is hurt but by himself, as Marcus Aurelius wrote. You are the gatekeeper to your mind. Never forget it. You can still feel the echo of that first blaze of anger as it simmers in your chest, but now it's time to dissect it. Picture yourself standing in a mirrored room where every flicker of emotion is magnified. Your heartbeat thumps like a war drum. Your hands tremble ever so slightly, as though tiny tremors ripple through your veins. That sensation isn't random, it's the body's ancient alarm system primed to protect you. Your mind leaps to worst-case scenarios. They're out to get me. I'll never be respected, and your vision tunnels into a single red dot of rage. At this juncture, most people let biology run the show. Fight or flight, right? You clench your jaw or ball your fists. Adrenaline courses, and your breath shortens to shallow pants. The world narrows to the perceived offender. You might feel a hot flush creeping up your neck, stiff shoulders, a pounding behind your eyes. You raise your voice to assert dominance, or you withdraw into stone-cold silence. These are the patterns you've rehearsed since your teenage years, automatic responses wired by survival instincts. But step back with me. Imagine that instead of reacting, you tune in like a sound engineer isolating frequencies on a mixing board. You lean into the sensations. You feel the wave of heat begin at your belly, rise along your torso, and spike behind your eyes. You notice how your stomach punches itself with butterflies, or are those bullets? You note the whisper in the back of your head, you must strike back. You're not labeling these experiences good or bad. You're simply observing. This deliberate pause is what distinguishes a Stoic from a reactor. Marcus Aurelius teaches, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant. By rehearsing these annoyances in advance, you prime your heart not to jump at the slightest poke. In this anatomical exploration, you're mapping the physiology of wrath so you can intervene before it becomes a wildfire. Let's follow a scene. You arrive at a coffee shop, late for a meeting, only to find the line spilling out the door. Your chest tightens. You grip the counter edge and tap your foot. You feel that low hum of irritation escalate to anger, every second stretching longer. In an impulsive moment, you might snap, is this barista auditioning for a sloth convention? But instead, you step back. You close your eyes for a heartbeat. You draw in 3 measured breaths, feeling air sweep past your collarbone, into your lungs, and then release. That's your buffer zone between impulse and action. Common advice says, take a deep breath. But Stoicism asks, why does this breath matter? Because in that long inhale, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, the biological mechanism that says, hey, it's okay, you're safe. You break the cycle of adrenaline, and in that silence, you regain agency. You might even whisper under your breath, in a soft ASMR cadence, "This moment is fleeting." Modern science supports this ancient prescription. Pause for just 6 seconds, and your prefrontal cortex re-engages, giving you space to choose a response instead of firing off on instinct. But Stoics go further. They don't merely stop the explosion, they analyze its root. You ask yourself, what judgment am I making? The coffee shop line becomes not just an inconvenience, but a personal affront, an error in your expectation that life should accommodate your schedule. Now, picture a case study. Neuroscientists studied participants who practiced mindful observation of their emotional states. They discovered that labeling feelings, "I'm frustrated," "I'm angry," lights up the brain's labeling network and dampens the amygdala's alarms. Epictetus, though unaware of fMRI machines, articulated the same principle. If you label something bad, you will suffer as though you had called the wrong thing good. This isn't mere nostalgia for antiquity, it's a blueprint for reprogramming your neural circuits. While many pop psych gurus praise emotional freedom techniques and tapping, Stoicism is neither gimmick nor fleeting trend. It's a rigorous inquiry. You trace the angry torrent back to the crack in your armor. Perhaps you feel undervalued at work or fear losing control. Academic debate still churns over whether Stoic mindfulness is identical to Buddhist mindfulness, or if it's a separate mental discipline with unique ethical underpinnings. Some historians argue Stoics aimed for apathy, apatheia, the absence of passion, while others insist apathy meant freedom from irrational passions, preserving rational feelings. Regardless, the outcome is similar. You learn to attend to the raw data of emotion without being crushed by it. Let's break down the sensory audit. Stage 1 is registering. There's heat in my chest. Stage 2 is labeling. This is anger. Stage 3 is investigating. Why am I angry? What expectation was violated? Stage 4 is deciding. Can I change the event, or must I change my judgment? If the trigger is beyond your power, like traffic, the barista's pace, or a colleague's oversight, it falls into the sphere of externals that Epictetus classifies as indifferent. Your peace of mind should not hinge on them. Imagine you're on a crowded subway, and someone elbows you. Anger surges, but you remember the Stoics' toolkit. You might softly murmur Seneca's counsel, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." You realize the elbow was likely accidental. The surge of irritation deflates. The stranger in front of you becomes not an adversary, but a fellow traveler. This transformation isn't gentle magic, it's deliberate practice. You journal each night, recounting moments of anger. What triggered you, how you felt physically, what judgment you identified, and how you responded. Over weeks, patterns emerge. You notice that comments about your competence wound you deeper than being cut off in traffic. You interrogate those patterns and rewrite your internal script. My worth isn't measured by fleeting opinions. In real life, the advantage is staggering. When a coworker publicly criticizes your project, you still feel the pang. But instead of storming off, you breathe, label, and ask, "What is within my power here?" You draft a measured reply, invite feedback, and convert critique into improvement. That's Stoic anatomy in action. Anger's raw nerve impulse becomes data for growth. You may wonder, does this process leave you cold or disconnected? On the contrary, as your nervous system learns to regulate, you become more present. You hear the subtle inflection in a friend's voice. You empathize rather than react. Your anger no longer burns bridges. You wield it like a surgeon's scalpel, precise, purposeful. So next time you feel that beat in your chest, don't fight it or flee from it. Lean into the anatomy, sense the heat, note the tremor, map the thoughts, label the feeling, and interrogate the judgment. That's how Stoics turn the raw furnace of fury into a refining fire that purifies rather than destroys. You've dissected the fire, mapped the anatomy, now you enter the crucible itself. Imagine yourself shackled in a narrow cell, the steel biting into your wrists. There's no natural light, only a single bulb flickering overhead. Every breath you draw feels stale, heavy with defeat. The guards march past, spitting curses, slamming doors. Your world has shrunk to concrete walls 3 feet thick, and your only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. In that endless night, anger flares like a torch, righteous, scorching, uncontrollable. At first, you roar inside your mind. This is unfair. They stole my freedom. I'll break these chains or die trying. You press your palms against the cold stone, knuckles whitening. Your pulse pounds so loud it drowns out distant footsteps. You replay the injustice over and over, each recollection fueling a new wave of fury. Sleep eludes you. Your dreams are violent fantasies of escape. You wake drenched in sweat, a prisoner of your own wrath. Then one day, you find a hidden scrap of paper wedged behind a loose brick. Faded ink spells a passage from Epictetus. No man is free who is not master of himself. You trace each word with trembling fingers. Suddenly, a sliver of possibility appears. Maybe freedom isn't the absence of chains, but the mastery of your inner citadel. If you can't control your captors, perhaps you can still command your own mind. You begin the practice. Each time anger bubbles, you hear a guard's footstep, recall a bleak memory, you pause. You name the sensation, this is rage. You feel the heat in your chest, the tremor in your limbs. You label it and breathe. 3 slow inhales, each one longer than the last. With every exhale, you imagine expelling a shard of your fury. You repeat under your breath, in a soft, rhythmic whisper worthy of an ASMR stream. These walls do not define me. Your cell becomes your laboratory. You maintain a private journal on torn bits of cloth, recording triggers, bodily sensations, judgments uncovered. You note that hunger sharpens your irritability, isolation warps your expectations, uncertainty fuels the most intense anger. You write, I feel betrayed. I believed in justice. Why am I surprised? In this act of documentation, you transform the raw nerve of fury into data for self-inquiry. Weeks pass. You practice premeditatio malorum in reverse. Instead of imagining misfortune, you visualize yourself remaining calm when confronted with it. When a guard barges in to deliver scant rations, you stand tall. You accept the injustice without screaming. Inside, you feel stillness bloom, a small green shoot in the desert of confinement. Your mind, once a riot of thoughts, grows disciplined. You begin reciting Marcus Aurelius' words as a mantra. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Sometimes you whisper it aloud. Other times, it hums like a secret lullaby in your skull. The astonishment isn't that you feel less anger, it's that your anger has stopped feeling inevitable. It has become optional. Then the real test arrives. One afternoon, the guard drags you out into the yard with other prisoners. The sun blinds you. The air thrums with hostile laughter. A tower guard smirks, taunts you, then strikes you without warning. In the past, you'd have flailed or unleashed a torrent of curses. But now, as his baton fragments your spirit, you maintain perfect equanimity. Inside, you note the sting, the surprise, the indignation, but you refuse to let it rule you. You breathe, you center, you remain unbroken. When the beatings are done, you return to your cell. Blood seeps through your shirt, but you sit cross-legged on the floor as if nothing has happened. You place a hand over your heart, feeling its steady rhythm. You murmur softly, "This pain will pass. My will endures." And indeed it does. The bruises heal, but your peace remains. Across the ocean in Vietnam, Admiral James Stockdale endured a similar trial. Captured during the Vietnam War, he spent 7 years as a prisoner of war in Hoa Lo. Stockdale later recounted that the Stoic principles he'd studied at Oxford guided him through brutal torture and isolation. He credited Epictetus for teaching him to focus on what was, and wasn't, within his control. His mental resilience became legendary. He organized secret classes, smuggled messages, and helped fellow inmates resist despair. Some historians still debate whether Stockdale's remarkable fortitude was purely Stoic or bolstered by his deep Christian faith intertwined with modern psychological techniques. Regardless, his unshakable serenity under the worst conditions stands as a living testament to the power of inner mastery. Back in your cell, you reflect on Stockdale's example. You realize that anger is not only self-defeating but also a luxury you can't afford. Your true enemy is not the guard who struck you, but but the volatile energy that would fracture your spirit. You vow to treat every attack, physical or verbal, as an opportunity to reinforce your mental citadel. On good days, you wander the small courtyard and greet fellow prisoners with calm nods. They ask how you stay so composed. You share Epictetus' teaching, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." You encourage them to identify the judgments seeding their fear. Some take to the practice, others dismiss it as naive. That debate itself echoes the ancient dispute among scholars. Kaknasu hak van tran luan lu stoic apathia, lack of destructive passion. Ko tuk su dan den apnoi tom, he chi bien nuoi tuk han tan fo tuong vio cam. You've learned that the answer lies not in labels but in lived experience. After months of consistent practice, you emerge from solitary confinement a changed person. The anger that once roiled you now feels like a tool, filtered, focused, ready to be wielded with intention. Your body still reacts to injustice, but the alarm no longer hijacks your reason. You've built a fortress within your own mind, and no external force can breach it. When you finally walk free, blinking under the open sky, you don't leap into a wild celebration. Instead, you pause, breathe deeply, and savor the warmth of the sun on your face, an ordinary sensation made miraculous by your newfound capacity to appreciate it. That first deep, unhurried inhalation feels like a benediction. You've lived through the crucible and emerged serene. You've proven that the Stoic path isn't a set of abstract ideals but a battlefield-tested methodology. You've transformed raw rage into unshakable calm. And now, every time anger beckons, you'll remember the cell's concrete walls and the lesson they taught. The only true prison is within your mind, unless you choose to set yourself free. You've mapped the furnace of your fury and survived the crucible of confinement. Now it's time to harness that energy into purposeful action. Picture yourself at a worn wooden desk in a quiet room, candlelight flickering across blank pages. Your knuckles still remember the sting of injustice, but your mind is calm, ready to channel the heat of anger into disciplined technique. This is where Stoic tools like journaling and premeditatio malorum become your forge, shaping raw emotion into a blade of rational response. You pick up a pen and begin your evening reflection. In the first column, you note the trigger, "My boss dismissed my proposal in today's meeting." You feel the familiar twinge of betrayal, that tightening in your chest. You pause, label the feeling, "This is anger." You ask yourself, "Why am I angry? Because I believed my work would be valued." Then you probe deeper, "What part of my judgment needs adjustment?" You realize you expected praise rather than feedback. With each sentence, you transform heat into data, distilled insights you can revisit later. Journaling is more than venting. It's an act of translation, converting physiological chaos into a coherent narrative. Seneca advised writing for self-examination. We should conduct our reflections as a general surveys his army. In that role, you inspect every division of your psyche, fear, pride, desire, and reassign them under the command of reason. The act of writing activates your prefrontal cortex, reinforcing neural pathways that favor thoughtful response over instinctual lashing out. After the catharsis of the journal, you turn to premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. You close your eyes and imagine the worst-case scenario. Your boss publicly criticizes you, you lose the account, your reputation falters. You let the images play like a dark movie, observing the sinking feeling in your gut. But instead of spiraling into despair, you remind yourself, "I have prepared for this. My value doesn't depend on one meeting." You breathe, open your eyes, and feel less startled by the prospect of failure because you've already met it in the theater of your mind. This mental rehearsal isn't morbidity but inoculation. When the real insult lands, it carries less shock. The firecracker fizzles because you've seen the spark days ago. You remember Marcus Aurelius' counsel, begin each day by telling yourself, "Today I shall meet with interference." All this happens according to nature. By anticipating obstacles, you neutralize their power to derail you. Now imagine you're back in the boardroom. Your boss delivers curt feedback, and your first impulse is to flare. Instead, you recall the evening's work, your notes, your rehearsal. You take a measured breath, summon a calm SMR-like whisper in your mind, I choose reason. You ask clarifying questions. Can you elaborate on which parts of the proposal seem weak? You demonstrate curiosity, not defensiveness. The room's tension shifts. Colleagues lean in, intrigued by your composure. This is how Stoics turn rage into rational action, by using structured practices that channel energy. Another tool is the Stoic pause. When anger surges, count a slow 4 in your head, then respond. That tiny interval empowers your rational self to override the emotional tyrant. It's the difference between snapping and speaking, between regret and respect. In fact, modern behavioral scientists affirm the pause's potency. When participants practice a 3-second delay before responding to provocation, those equipped with that interval report lower heart rates and more constructive resolutions. Stoics were onto this centuries ago, long before randomized trials validated their wisdom. They knew that in that brief silence lies the seed of choice. You might ask, but isn't this all too mechanical? Doesn't it strip me of authenticity? That's a common critique. Some critics argue Stoic techniques can lead to robotic stoicism, what scholars term hypercognitive emotional regulation, where feelings become overmanaged and superficially rational. Yet others counter that genuine self-mastery requires structure, and without these tools, you remain at the mercy of impulses. The debate rages among psychologists. Does emotional regulation enhance well-being, or does it create a facade of composure masking unprocessed trauma? The answer likely lies in balance. Use the techniques without losing your human edge. Let's examine another scenario. You receive a scathing review from an online troll laced with personal insults. Your heart hammers in your ears. The impulse is to craft a blistering reply. But instead, you open your journal on your phone and write, "Today I faced cruelty from a stranger. I felt small and outraged." Then you ask, what judgment fed this hurt? That I deserve respect from every random stranger. You realize that your expectation is unreasonable. You close the journal and send no reply. You save your energy for interactions within your control. This practice builds a reservoir of resilience. Over time, you notice that fewer insults faze you. You develop a Stoic armor that isn't cold metal but woven from self-knowledge and strategic reflection. You learn to differentiate between volcanoes worth erupting and roadside sparks best ignored. Of course, techniques alone aren't enough. The Stoic path demands ethical purpose. When you transform anger into action, aim at justice rather than retribution. Channel the energy that once fueled bitter tirades toward constructive goals, mentoring a colleague, advocating for fair policy, or creating art that channels indignation into empathy. Epictetus reminds you, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Your rational action must align with your highest values. Consider a real case. After a corporate scandal erupted, an executive known for his fiery temper was advised by a Stoic coach to convert his outrage into systemic reform. Instead of railing against the media, he convened listening sessions with affected communities, drafted transparent policies, and rebuilt trust over years. His journey embodies the transformation of raw rage into principled leadership. Historians still debate whether his change was genuine stoicism or a savvy PR move, but the impact, reduced recidivism and restored confidence, speaks for itself. In your own life, you might not be a corporate titan, but the principle holds. You can use anger's intensity to galvanize social action, organizing community cleanups in response to environmental injustice or spearheading initiatives to address bullying in schools. When anger emerges, ask, how can this propel me toward virtue? Then act, guided by purpose and tempered by reason. Before we move on, let's revisit the tools at your disposal. 1. Journaling. Translate chaos into clarity. 2. Premeditatio malorum. Pre-live adversity to inoculate your spirit. 3. Stoic pause. Brief delay to reconnect with reason. 4. Ethical redirection. Target anger at injustice, not personal vengeance. Use these like daily exercises at the gym. Just as muscles atrophy without movement, your rational mind weakens without disciplined practice. Each entry, Each rehearsal, each pause builds mental strength. You've already felt the shift. Where you once ranted, you now ask questions. Where you once stormed off, you now stay engaged. Your body still produces adrenaline, your heart still races, but your mind intercepts the signal. You choose whether to release or redirect that energy. You remain a participant in your internal drama, not a hostage. So tonight, as you close your journal, pause one last time and reflect. How will you channel tomorrow's anger? What boundary will you set? What action will you plan? By answering these questions, you transform future fury into deliberate strategy. You become not just a reactor, but an architect of your own emotional destiny. You step out of the arena where you've been sparring with your own fury and into the calm of daily life, but the battle isn't over yet. You recall waking yesterday to an email that rattled you, an abrupt question from a colleague that felt like a gauntlet thrown at your confidence. In the past, you might have fumed for hours, replaying it in your head like a broken record. Today, however, you pause, take a breath, and remind yourself you have power over your mind, not outside events. That gentle echo of Marcus Aurelius doesn't just soothe you in the moment. It's the seed of a habit that grows stronger with each repetition. Living beyond the anger loop means weaving Stoic practices into the fabric of your everyday routine, so you don't revisit the same fury each time life bumps you. First, you cultivate an evening review ritual. At day's end, you sit in quiet reflection, perhaps with a cup of herbal tea, the steam drifting in slow arcs, observing moments that provoked anger and noting how you address them. This isn't beating yourself up, it's compassionate analysis. Seneca urged, every night before you go to sleep, ask yourself, what weakness did I overcome today? In that question, you find both accountability and grace. You also anchor yourself each morning with a concise set of Stoic precepts. You might write 3 intentions on a sticky note by your mirror. Today, I will accept what I cannot change. I will speak only what adds value. I will remember the impermanence of frustration. As you apply toothpaste to your brush, you murmur them softly, internalizing each phrase. This ritual, mundane yet potent, creates a barrier between the spark of anger and the wildfire it could become. On your commute, you practice mental check-ins. Every red light becomes a reminder. Observe your breath, scan for tension, label any emotion that surfaces. You might not have time for a full journal entry, but a quick inner note. Here lies impatience, breaks the chain of reactive thought. Modern psychologists debate whether micromindfulness like this truly reduces long-term stress, or if it simply offers a fleeting placebo. Some studies suggest repeated labeling rewires neural pathways for emotional regulation, while critics label it cognitive patchwork that fails under severe duress. Yet you felt the difference in your own body. A softer jaw, an open chest, a sense that you're riding the wave instead of being swept away. At work, when friction arises, an unexpected project deadline, a terse comment in a chat thread, you remind yourself of Epictetus' teaching. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Rather than sending an impulsive reply, you bookmark the message and step away. You might refill your water bottle or stretch your shoulders, giving your rational mind a moment to re-engage. You've discovered that small pauses compound into profound shifts. Colleagues notice your steadiness, and soon you're consulted on tense negotiations because you've built a reputation as someone who stays cool under pressure. Outside the office, you deepen your practice through periodic, Stoic Sabbaths. Once a week, you unplug from digital noise, no social media, no news alerts, and spend time in nature or with a physical craft. Gardening, woodworking, even simple cooking. In this space, you confront the irritations of the analog world. A stubborn weed, a lopsided shelf, a sauce that refuses to thicken, and apply the same Stoic lens. You label the frustration, examine the judgment, this should be effortless, and adjust your expectations. You notice that accepting small imperfections here bleeds into larger arenas, reducing the likelihood that a glitch in your bank account app will send you spiraling into rage. Then there's the practice of daily quotes. You select a short passage from Marcus Aurelius or Seneca and place it where you'll see it frequently, above your desk, on your fridge, or as the wallpaper of your phone. Today it reads, "If you seek tranquility, do less." tomorrows might warn, anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. Each time you glance at these words, you're reminded of the Stoic vantage point. Your choices carve the landscape of your inner world. You also lean into community. You join, or even form, a small group of like-minded friends who meet fortnightly to discuss Stoic insights and share personal challenges. In this forum, you recount moments when anger almost engulfed you, then reveal how you intercepted it. Others do the same. Some nights, debates flare, whether true Stoic calm should verge on apathy, a state some label Stoic numbness. Scholars still argue if apatheia is the absence of all passion or merely a freedom from destructive ones. Yet in your group, you see that vibrant care and engaged empathy can coexist with equanimity. Your integration of Stoic habits extends to random interactions, too. When someone cuts you off in conversation at a cafe, you don't grit your teeth. Instead, you lean in and say, "Go ahead, I was merely rehearsing my next sentence." The slight humor disarms tension, and you both move on. This tactic, transforming potential conflict into a shared joke, derives from the Stoic emphasis on turning obstacles into opportunities. It's a practical embodiment of the principle that the impediment to action advances action, a concept still dissected by historians comparing Stoic and Eastern philosophies. You maintain your momentum through periodic anger audits. Once a month, you tally every significant flare-up and evaluate your response. Did you catch it early? Did you redirect it productively? Did you let it slip? This audit isn't about perfection but progress. You chart incremental gains, the emails you drafted calmly rather than in heat, the in-person conversations you navigated with poise, the self-criticisms you tempered with self-compassion. Over time, the audit reveals a clear trajectory. You're spending less time ruminating on perceived slights and more time engaging in constructive dialogue. Of course, you still encounter moments that sting: an unkind review, an abrupt breakup, a sudden cancellation. But now, you greet these events with a familiar sequence. Notice the sting, label the wound, question the expectation, choose your focus. You may feel the old surge of adrenaline, but it no longer hijacks your narrative. Instead, you harness it, perhaps to fuel a new project born of righteous indignation or to energize a workout that clears the mind. You transform what once felt like a trap into a launchpad. And every so often, you circle back to the cell where you perfected this resilience. You close your eyes and recall the sensation of being struck yet unbroken. You feel gratitude that you didn't squander your anguish on hollow retaliation. You whisper softly, in that ASMR cadence that's become second nature, "My freedom was here all along." In this way, living beyond the anger loop becomes not a destination but a lifelong practice, a rhythm of reflection, anticipation, pause, and redirection. The raw heat of anger still ignites, but you've constructed fire breaks in your mind, daily rituals, communal checks, and intentional pauses that keep the blaze from ravaging your peace. As you move through life, you find that those small embers of frustration don't leave scars. They illuminate paths to deeper understanding and purposeful action. So you carry on, weaving Stoic threads through the tapestry of your days, one mindful moment at a time, one deliberate breath at a time, forging an unbreakable habit of serenity. You feel your heartbeat gently settling, each pulse a whisper rather than a drumbeat, as the edges of your thoughts soften and the world's sharp angles blur into gentle curves. Imagine the warmth of a late afternoon sun filtering through a window, casting long, drowsy shadows across a quiet room. Nothing demands your attention now except the subtle rise and fall of your breath. In this tranquil space, you allow the residue of past anger to dissolve, molecule by molecule, until even the memory of heat feels distant, like the echo of a song heard long ago. Your mind drifts, unhurried, through moments of stillness, the scent of old books, the faint creak of floorboards, the cool caress of a breeze that stirs a single leaf outside. You rest in the knowledge that every flame you once fanned has been transformed into a gentle glow, illuminating what matters rather than consuming it. Words from Seneca float to the surface. "He who indulges in empty fears expends restless energy." You smile inwardly, feeling the last wisps of tension slide off your shoulders. Here, there is no longer urgency, only presence. You savor how the simple act of noticing gives rise to calm. The way your chest softens, the way your jaw unclenches, the way your heart acknowledges that peace is not escape but acceptance. There's room now for gratitude, for the trials that taught you resilience, for the practices that shaped your serenity, and for the unassuming power of a single, deliberate breath. As you linger in this gentle aftermath, you understand that the Stoic journey isn't about vanquishing emotion but befriending it, welcoming its lessons, then letting it pass. The world beyond your window may still spin in chaos, but you remain anchored, buoyed by the quiet confidence that arises when you choose, again and again, to respond with intention rather than impulse. What unexpected insight did you discover about your own anger today? If this guided journey through Stoic calm resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.